I'm Lucille, 32 female. I'm an architect living in a city that rewards precision and punishes mistakes, and I've built my life and career on that principle. My world is one of blueprints, support structures, and the unwavering logic that holds things together. My brother, Marcus, is the only variable I've ever truly cherished, the one person whose happiness could make me bend my own rigid rules. So when he decided to marry Vanessa, I was prepared to build a bridge to a woman who seemed designed on a completely different blueprint. I never imagined she'd be the one to rig that bridge with explosives, all because of the color of a dress she herself approved. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. My relationship with my brother Marcus has always been the foundation of my family life. We were 2 years apart and navigated the complexities of childhood and the turbulence of our teenage years as a solid, unshakable team. When our parents were busy, we had each other. When life threw its inevitable curveballs, we were each other's first call. He was a software engineer, a man who saw the world in logical code, and I, the architect, saw it in structural design. We understood each other on a fundamental level. We both believed that for something to last, it had to be built on a solid, honest foundation. Then came Vanessa. When Marcus introduced us, my first impression was one of overwhelming polish. Vanessa worked as a luxury brand ambassador, a title that seemed to perfectly encapsulate her essence. Her life wasn't just lived, it was curated. Her social media was a flawless gallery of five-star resorts, exclusive product launches, and candid moments that were anything but. She was beautiful, charming, and possessed an unnerving ability to command the attention of any room she entered. Marcus was utterly smitten. He saw her confidence as strength and her meticulous attention to her own image as ambition. I saw it as a warning sign, a structure with a beautiful facade that might be hiding critical design flaws. But I loved my brother, and his happiness was paramount, so I resolved to find the good in Vanessa to build that bridge. For 2 years, I tried. I invited her to lunch, remembered her birthday, and complimented her endless stream of online achievements. My efforts were usually met with a polite but distant warmth that never quite reached her eyes. She treated me not as a future sister, but as a potential rival for Marcus's attention. Any story I told about our shared childhood was met with a tight smile, as if my history with him was an inconvenient truth in the brand narrative she was building for their future. When they announced their engagement, I was genuinely happy for Marcus. I hugged them both and promised to help in any way I could. Vanessa's vision for the wedding was, unsurprisingly, extravagant and precise. It was less a celebration of love and more a large-scale branding event. The venue was a historic estate, the caterer was a Michelin-starred chef, and the photographer was booked a year in advance. Every detail was subject to Vanessa's exacting standards. The first point of friction was, of course, the bridal party. Vanessa had 6 bridesmaids, a collection of equally polished friends from her industry. Their dresses were to be a very specific shade of dusty rose. When I asked what she would like me and our mothers to wear, she waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, anything that doesn't clash, just be elegant." This was too vague for me. As an architect, I know that anything is never the right answer. Vague instructions lead to costly errors. I wanted to do the right thing, to be a supportive sister-in-law and blend seamlessly into her perfect day. So, a few months before the wedding, I broached the subject again, this time with more directness. "Vanessa, I really want to make sure I get this right for you," I said over coffee. "Could you give me a color family to work with? I don't want to accidentally match the bridesmaids or choose something you hate." She seemed to appreciate the directness. She tapped her chin, thinking, "The bridesmaids are in dusty rose, and the flowers have lots of blush and cream tones. My mother is wearing navy, and Marcus's mom will be in silver. For you, something in the champagne or light gold family would be lovely. It will complement the bridal party without matching it. Chic and sophisticated." "Champagne or light gold. Got it," I confirmed, making a mental note. I'll find a few options and run them by you just to be safe. Her smile was bright. You don't have to do that. I trust your taste, Lucille. Just find something beautiful. But I didn't trust her vague reassurances. I knew that for someone as controlling as Vanessa, I trust your taste was a trap. So I did M. Why due diligence? I spent a weekend shopping and found a dress that was, in my opinion, perfect. It was an elegant, floor-length sheath dress in a soft, shimmering champagne color. It was classic, understated, and undeniably beautiful without being flashy. It was the architectural equivalent of a perfectly designed support column. Strong, elegant, and meant to enhance the main structure, not distract from it. To be absolutely certain, I took a picture of myself in the dress in the store's natural lighting. I attached it to an email with the subject line, "Wedding dress option for your approval." I wrote, "Hi Vanessa, hope the planning is going well. I found a dress I think fits the champagne light gold idea you mentioned. Let me know if this works for your vision. If not, no problem at all, I can keep looking. Can't wait for the big day. Best, Lucille." 2 days later, her reply landed in my inbox. It was short and effusive, punctuated with her signature online persona. "Lucille, it's perfect. So chic. You are going to look stunning. Can't wait to celebrate with you. Zoxo V." I saved the email, a wave of relief washing over me. I had done everything right. I had communicated clearly, sought approval, and received a definitive answer. I had the blueprint, and it was signed off. I bought the dress, had it tailored, and hung it in my closet, feeling confident that I had successfully navigated a potential minefield. I truly believed I had laid a strong, stable brick in the foundation of my new relationship with my sister-in-law. I had no idea that she was already planning to use that very brick to tear the whole structure down. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect autumn day. I felt a genuine sense of excitement as I got ready, the champagne-colored dress hanging like a promise of a beautiful celebration. I had my hair and makeup done professionally, wanting to look my best for my brother's big day. As I slipped into the dress, I felt elegant and appropriate. I was not a bridesmaid, I was the groom's sister. I was there to support, to witness, and to celebrate. I felt I had honored Vanessa's vision perfectly. When I arrived at the sprawling historic estate, the atmosphere was buzzing with joyful energy. Guests in fine attire mingled on the manicured lawns, sipping champagne under the warm afternoon sun. I saw Marcus near the entrance to the grand hall, looking impossibly handsome in his tuxedo, but with a familiar nervous energy in his eyes. I walked over and gave him a huge hug. "You look amazing, Mark," I whispered, straightening his bow tie. "How are you holding up?" He let out a shaky breath. "Nervous, excited, terrified, is this normal?" "Completely normal," I laughed. "It's going to be a wonderful day. I'm so happy for you." We shared a moment of quiet connection, the kind we'd shared 1,000 times before. It was a pocket of calm in the swirling chaos of the event. It was the last truly peaceful moment I would have that day. Just then, Vanessa swept by, a vision in white, flanked by her covey of dusty rose-clad bridesmaids. She was on her way to a secluded room before the ceremony began. She saw me standing with Marcus, and her professionally bright smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Her eyes flickered down to my dress, and I saw a flicker of something cold in her gaze before it was gone. "Lucille, you're here," she said, her voice a little too clipped. "Marcus, darling, you shouldn't be seeing me, it's bad luck." She gave him an air kiss and then, without another word to me, she was gone, leaving a trail of expensive perfume in her wake. I dismissed her coldness as pre-wedding jitters. Every bride was entitled to a little stress. The ceremony was held in a stunning garden overflowing with white roses and eucalyptus. It was beautiful, tasteful, and perfectly executed. As I watched Marcus say his vows to Vanessa, his voice thick with emotion, I felt tears well up in my eyes. In that moment, all of my reservations about her melted away. All that mattered was my brother's happiness, and he looked like the happiest man on earth. After the ceremony, we moved to a wide stone terrace for the cocktail hour. The mood was effervescent. Laughter and music filled the air. I was chatting with some of our cousins when I saw two men in dark suits speaking to one of the bridesmaids, who then pointed discreetly in my direction. I felt a prickle of unease. A moment later, one of the men was standing beside me. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice low and firm. "Are you Lucille?" "Yes, I am," I replied, confused. "Is there a problem?" "We need you to come with us, please," he said, not unkindly, but with an air of non-negotiable authority. My cousins looked on, bewildered. A knot of dread formed in my stomach. Was there some kind of emergency? "What is this about?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It's best if we discuss this privately, please," he gestured towards a side door leading away from the terrace. My mind was racing. Had something happened to my parents? Was there a security threat? I numbly excused myself and followed him, the eyes of the other guests feeling like physical blows on my back. He led me through a quiet corridor and out a service entrance, where the other guard was waiting with Vanessa. The moment we were outside, Vanessa's carefully constructed bridal facade crumbled to reveal a face contorted with rage. The transformation was terrifying. "How could you?" she hissed, her voice trembling with fury. She took a step towards me, her white dress looking ghoulish in the harsh light of the setting sun. "Vanessa, what's wrong? What's happened?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Don't play dumb with me," she spat, jabbing a finger at my dress. "That color, it's practically white in this light. It's almost the same shade as the decor accents. You are trying to upstage me. On my wedding day." I was so stunned, I couldn't speak for a moment. I looked down at my champagne dress, then back at her incandescent rage. "What? No, this is champagne, the color you told me to wear. The bridesmaids are in dusty rose. I don't understand." "You understood perfectly," she seethed. "You've always been jealous of me and Marcus. You think you can just waltz in here, looking like a second bride, and steal my spotlight? I don't think so." "I have the email, Vanessa," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. "You approved this exact dress. You said it was perfect." "I never said that. You're lying," she shrieked, her voice rising. "I knew you would pull something like this. You're a toxic, jealous person, and I will not have you poisoning my wedding day." She turned to the security guard, her expression shifting to one of a wronged victim. "She is causing a disturbance. She is no longer welcome at this event. Please escort her off the property. Immediately." The guard looked from her to me, a flicker of discomfort in his professional gaze. But he had his orders. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you need to leave." Tears of pure, unadulterated humiliation stung my eyes. "Vanessa, please don't do this. This is my brother's wedding." "You should have thought of that before you decided to declare war on me," she said, her voice dripping with venom. She turned on her heel and swept back inside, a triumphant queen who had just banished her rival. I stood there, frozen in shock, as the guard gently but firmly guided me towards the parking lot. I walked past the kitchen staff on their smoke break, who stared at me with pity. I walked past the rows of expensive cars. I was a spectacle. A woman in a beautiful gown, with perfect hair and makeup, being marched out of her own brother's wedding like a criminal. He put me in a golf cart and drove me to the front gate. When I was standing on the gravel shoulder of the country road, utterly alone, the full weight of the mortification crashed down on me. I stood there on the curb, the sound of the party a faint, mocking echo in the distance, and I began to sob. The minutes stretched into an eternity as I stood on the side of that desolate road. Cars belonging to late-arriving guests sped past, their occupants oblivious to the woman in the formal gown standing on the curb like a forgotten piece of luggage. Each passing headlight felt like an accusation. The chill of the evening air began to seep through my dress, a cold that had nothing to do with the temperature and everything to do with the profound, soul-crushing humiliation of the moment. My first instinct was to call Marcus. I pulled out my phone, my hands trembling so violently I could barely unlock it. I dialed his number, my heart aching for the sound of his voice, for him to tell me this was all a terrible mistake. It went straight to voicemail. Of course it did. He was at his own wedding reception, likely in the middle of the grand entrance or the first dance, completely unaware that his sister had been physically removed from the premises. I tried my mother next. Voicemail again. My father, same result. They were all inside, their phones silenced, celebrating the union that had just resulted in my exile. I was utterly and completely alone. The tears that had been trickling down my face turned into ragged, heaving sobs. I leaned against the cold stone of the estate's entrance pillar, my beautiful, perfect dress now feeling like a costume of shame. How had this happened? How could Vanessa's jealousy and paranoia be so powerful that she could sever me from my own family with a single, baseless accusation? I was scrolling aimlessly through my contacts, trying to think of who to call for a ride, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, assuming it was a spam message, but something made me look. The message read, "This is Diana Grayson, the wedding planner. I am at the main house. I just saw what happened and I am so deeply sorry. What Vanessa did was unprofessional and completely unacceptable." I stared at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. Diana Grayson. I remembered her from the planning meetings. She was a woman in her mid-40s, impeccably dressed, with a calm, no-nonsense demeanor that inspired confidence. She was the picture of professionalism. For her to reach out like this to break ranks meant that what I had just experienced was as outrageous as it felt. Before I could even formulate a reply, another message came through from her. It was a picture, a screenshot. My first thought was that she had somehow gotten a copy of the email I had sent to Vanessa, but it was something else entirely, something far more powerful. It was a screenshot of an internal planning document, a summary sheet for the florist and decor team. It was a highly detailed invoice and work order. At the top was the event name, Marcus and Vanessa's wedding. Below were line items for floral arrangements, linens, and lighting. And then, at the bottom, there was a section titled Key Personnel Attire and Color Palette. It listed the bride, the groom, the parents of the bride, and the parents of the groom with their corresponding colors. Then I saw my name. The line item read, Sister of the Groom, Lucille. Next to it, in clear, unambiguous text, was the color, champagne light gold, confirmed by bride. My tears stopped instantly. The hot sting of shame was replaced by a wave of ice-cold fury. This wasn't just my word against hers. This wasn't just a personal email she could claim was fake or that she'd misread. This was an official planning document. This was a piece of logistical information she had communicated to a third-party vendor as part of a professional contract. She hadn't just approved my dress, she had actively incorporated it into the master plan for her own wedding. A third text from Diana appeared. There's more. She has been creating issues all day, trying to find a scapegoat for her own stress. This was a premeditated act. Please call me when you are in a safe place. I have the original documents. The proof was absolute. It was undeniable. This was not a misunderstanding. It was not a case of bridal stress. It was a calculated, malicious act designed to humiliate me and, more importantly, to isolate me from my brother. She had set a trap, and I had walked right into it, armed only with the naive belief that doing the right thing was enough to protect me. I took a deep, shaky breath. The architect in my brain, the part of me that deals in logic, evidence, and structural integrity, began to fire up. The emotional, humiliated victim was receding, and in her place, someone far more focused was emerging. Vanessa had lied. She had gaslighted me. She had used her power as the bride to inflict the maximum possible emotional damage. She had treated me like a structural flaw in her perfect day and had me demolished. But she had made a critical error. She had left behind a blueprint of her malice, and she had underestimated the person she was dealing with. I don't respond to drama with more drama. I respond to structural failures with meticulous analysis and a plan for reinforcement. I wiped my eyes, stood up straight, and brushed the dust from my dress. I typed a reply to Diana, my fingers steady now. Thank you, Diana. I'm safe. I'm calling an Uber now. I have the original email she sent me as well. It seems we both have copies of the blueprints. I would very much like to talk. As I waited for my ride to arrive, I no longer felt like a victim. I felt like an architect who had just discovered a fatal flaw in a building's foundation. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was going to expose it. The party could continue for now, but a reckoning was coming. Vanessa wanted a perfect, flawless event. She was about to find out what happens when you try to build a palace on a foundation of lies. The Uber ride back to my apartment was silent and surreal. The city lights blurred past the window, a stark contrast to the manicured perfection of the wedding venue. I walked into my quiet, orderly apartment and took off the beautiful dress that had become the catalyst for so much pain. I hung it back in its garment bag, not out of sentiment, but with the detached precision of a detective bagging evidence. My home, with its clean lines and minimalist decor, was a sanctuary of logic and reason. It was exactly what I needed. After changing into comfortable clothes, I made a cup of tea and sat at my large drafting table, my laptop open in front of me. I pulled up the email from Vanessa, her perfect, so chic, Zoxo V glowing on the screen. I saved it as a PDF. Then I looked at the screenshot Diana had sent me. Champagne light gold, confirmed by bride. 2 separate, verifiable pieces of evidence. A solid case. My phone rang. It was Diana. I answered on the first ring. "Lucille, are you all right?" Her voice was. A calm, steady presence in the chaos of my evening. "I'm home and I'm safe," I said, my own voice surprisingly firm. "But I'm not all right, I'm furious. Thank you for reaching out. You may have just saved my sanity." "I couldn't stand by and watch that," she said, a hint of steel in her tone. "I've been a planner for 20 years, and I have never, ever seen a bride treat a family member that way. It was a blatant power play." We spoke for nearly an hour. Diana painted a picture of a client who was not just a stressed bride, but a manipulative and deeply insecure person. She told me how Vanessa had tried to claim the caterer had served the wrong appetizers to get a discount, only for Diana to produce the email where Vanessa had approved the menu herself. She mentioned how Vanessa had accused the florist of using the wrong type of roses, a claim Diana disproved with photos from the floral market that Vanessa had personally signed off on. This was a pattern. Vanessa created problems, blamed others, and then played the victim to get what she wanted. Her entire strategy revolves around creating chaos and then positioning herself as the calm center of it, Diana explained. She isolates people by making them seem unreasonable or crazy. She tried it with the vendors, and when we produced receipts, she backed down. Tonight, she tried it with you. "And she did it in front of everyone," I said, the memory of the guests' confused stares making my stomach clench. "She wanted to publicly mark her territory, to show everyone that she's the one in charge of Marcus now." "Exactly," Diana confirmed. "This was never about the color of your dress, Lucille. It was about sending a message to you and, by extension, to your entire family. The message is, I am the one who matters now. Your history and your relationship with Marcus are secondary to my authority." Hearing my own feelings articulated by a rational, impartial third party was incredibly validating. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't overreacted. I was the target of a calculated attack. "So what do I do?" I asked, the question hanging in the air. "My first instinct is to forward these emails to my entire family and blow this whole thing up. But that's her move, isn't it? Loud, public drama, and it would ruin the rest of the night for Marcus." "It would," Diana agreed. "And you would be playing her game. Justice doesn't have to be a bomb, Lucille. Sometimes it's more effective as a scalpel, precise, targeted, and undeniable. You don't need to convince the whole world. You only need to convince the one person whose opinion truly matters in this situation." "Marcus," I breathed. "Marcus," she affirmed. "He needs to see who he has married. Not through a dramatic he-said-she-said fight during the reception, but with cold, hard, irrefutable proof presented at the right time, in the right way." An idea began to form in my mind, one born from my professional life. When I present a design to a difficult client, I don't argue with them. I present the data. I show them the stress tests, the material specs, the building codes. I let the evidence speak for itself. I need to get this evidence to him, I said, thinking aloud. But not tonight, not while he's emotional and overwhelmed. It has to be after the fact, when the dust has settled. Or, Diana countered gently, it has to be tonight, but in a way that doesn't detonate the party. In a way that allows him to process it on his own terms. We fell silent for a moment, both considering the logistics. The goal wasn't to punish the wedding guests or cause a scene. The goal was to provide Marcus with the unvarnished truth about his new wife. We needed a delivery method that was quiet, personal, and devastatingly effective. She used a public spectacle to humiliate me, I said, my resolve hardening. I'm going to use a private, undeniable truth to expose her. We started to formulate a plan. It was intricate, requiring precise timing and execution. Diana, with her all-access pass and knowledge of the event schedule, would be my inside woman. I would be the strategist on the outside. We weren't planning a revenge plot based on emotion. We were designing a structural intervention. By the time we hung up, I felt a strange sense of calm. The humiliation had been burned away by the clean fire of purpose. Vanessa saw me as a decorative element she could discard at will. She failed to realize that I was an architect. I understand foundations. And I was about to give my brother the blueprint of the woman he had just married, showing him, in black and white, that the entire structure was built on a lie. This wouldn't be a messy, emotional confrontation. It would be a quiet, calculated presentation of facts. And in its own way, that would be the most devastating revenge of all. The plan was a study in precision and subtlety, a stark contrast to Vanessa's loud, theatrical cruelty. It was designed not to create a scene, but to plant a seed of truth that would be impossible for my brother to ignore. It was an architect's revenge, methodical, evidence-based, and built to last. First, I went to my home office. I opened a new file in my design software, the same program I used to create blueprints for multi-million-dollar buildings. I created a simple, elegant document. On the top half of the page, I placed a high-resolution image of the email I had sent to Vanessa, with her reply clearly visible. Perfect. So chic. Zoxo V, I highlighted her words in a soft gray. On the bottom half of the page, I placed the screenshot Diana had sent me, the vendor invoice. I cropped it to focus on the key line, sister of the groom, Lucille, champagne light gold, confirmed by bride. I highlighted the words, confirmed by bride. I printed the document on high-quality, heavy cardstock. The paper felt substantial in my hands, a physical manifestation of the truth. It wasn't an angry, rambling letter. It was a dossier. It was evidence. Next, I found a small, luxurious gift box I had saved from a past birthday. It was a deep navy blue, tied with a simple cream-colored ribbon. It was tasteful and looked every bit like a proper wedding gift. I placed the printed document inside. On top of it, I wrote a short, heartfelt note on a simple white card. I chose my words carefully, writing and rewriting them until they were perfect. The note read, "Dearest Marcus, congratulations on this beautiful day. My only wish has ever been for your lifelong happiness. A strong future, like any strong building, must be built on a foundation of absolute truth and trust. I will always be here for you. All my love, Lucille." I didn't mention Vanessa. I didn't mention the dress or being kicked out. I simply stated my love for him and my belief in the importance of truth. The document in the box would do the rest. The juxtaposition of my loving words with the cold, hard proof of his wife's deception would be more powerful than any accusation I could ever make. I sealed the card in an envelope with his name on it and placed it in the box. I closed the lid and retied the ribbon, my movements deliberate and calm. This was my wedding gift to him, not the expensive crystal glasses on their registry, but something far more valuable: clarity. The final step was to prepare myself. I took a shower, washing away the lingering feeling of humiliation. I changed not into another formal dress, but into a chic, understated black pantsuit. It was my professional armor, the outfit I wore when I needed to be taken seriously. I was no longer a wedding guest. I was a messenger. I messaged Diana, "The package is ready. I am on my way back to the venue. Let me know when the time is right." Her reply was immediate. "Understood. The guests are currently being seated for dinner. The speeches will start in approximately 45 minutes. That will be our window. Wait in the main hotel lobby. I will handle the rest." Driving back to the estate felt different this time. I wasn't filled with nervous excitement or dread. I was filled with a steely resolve. I parked in the guest lot, walked into the opulent hotel lobby adjacent to the grand ballroom, and took a seat in an armchair with a clear view of the entrance. I looked like any other hotel guest, calmly waiting. Inside the box I held on my lap was a quiet bomb. Vanessa had used security guards and public shaming to assert her power. I was using a beautifully wrapped box and a piece of paper. Her method was chaos. Mine was order. My phone buzzed. It was Diana. "Speeches are starting. Best man is up first. Groom's speech will be last. I will have a member of the hotel staff summon Marcus to the hallway outside the ballroom in 5 minutes. He will be told there is an urgent message from his sister." I texted back a simple, "Ready." My heart began to beat a little faster, but my hands were steady. This was it, the moment of execution. I stood up and walked towards the ballroom doors, my posture straight, my expression neutral. I was an architect about to present a final, unchangeable blueprint. The structure of my brother's new life was about to be tested, and I had just handed him the stress report. 5 minutes later, just as Diana had predicted, one of the ballroom doors opened. Marcus stepped out into the grand, hushed corridor, a look of concern on his face. He was likely expecting to find me distraught or to hear of some family emergency. He stopped short when he saw me standing there, calm and composed in my black pantsuit, holding a small, elegant gift box. "Lucille," he said, his voice a mixture of relief and confusion. "What are you doing here? I was so worried. Vanessa said you felt ill and had to go home." The lie was so effortless, so plausible. It was the perfect alibi she had constructed for my absence. For a moment, I saw the path of least resistance. I could nod, agree that I was feeling better, and let it all go. But the HT of the box in my hands, and the cold truth it contained, anchored me to my purpose. "I wasn't sick, Marcus," I said, my voice even and quiet. "Vanessa asked me to leave." His brow furrowed in disbelief. "What? Why? That doesn't make any sense." "We can talk about it later. That's not why I'm here," I said, holding out the box. "I couldn't leave without giving you your wedding gift. I won't stay, I promise. I just wanted to make sure you got this." He looked from my face to the box, his confusion deepening. He took it from me, his hands brushing mine. In that moment, I could see the internal conflict warring in his eyes. He loved me, and he trusted me. But he was also a brand new husband, loyal to the woman he had just pledged his life to. "Lucille, I don't understand," he started, but I cut him off gently. "You don't have to understand right now," I said. "Just promise me you'll open it later tonight when you have a quiet moment. Read the card first." I gave his arm a reassuring squeeze. "Congratulations, Mark. I truly hope you have a lifetime of happiness." And with that, I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I could feel his eyes on me as I walked down the long corridor and out of the hotel lobby doors. I had delivered the package. The rest was up to him. Inside the ballroom, as I later learned from my parents, the best man was finishing a long, rambling toast. Marcus returned to his seat at the head table, placing the small navy box next to his champagne flute. Vanessa, smiling radiantly at the best man's joke, leaned over and whispered, "Everything okay, darling?" "Fine," Marcus replied, his voice flat. "It was just Lucille. She dropped off a gift." Vanessa's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. She hadn't counted on me returning. Marcus stared at the box. My parting words must have echoed in his mind. He picked up the small envelope and slipped out the card. He read the words, "A strong future, like any strong building, must be built on a foundation of absolute truth and trust. My mother told me later that she saw the exact moment his expression shifted. The happy, slightly tipsy groom disappeared, replaced by the serious, analytical brother she knew so well. His curiosity, piqued by the cryptic message, got the better of him. While the maid of honor began her speech, he carefully slipped the ribbon off the box and lifted the lid. Under the dim lights of the ballroom, he saw the document. He saw the screenshot of my email next to the screenshot of the vendor invoice. He saw his wife's enthusiastic approval and her official confirmation of my dress color, side by side. There was no ambiguity. There was no room for interpretation. It was a blueprint of her deceit. He slowly closed the box. His face was a pale, unreadable mask. He looked at Vanessa, who was now dabbing a tear at the maid of honor's sentimental words. She looked every bit the perfect, emotional bride, but Marcus was no longer looking at a bride. He was looking at a stranger. When it was his turn to give the groom's speech, a hush fell over the room. He stood up, champagne glass in hand. He thanked the guests for coming. He thanked his parents and Vanessa's parents for their love and support. His voice was steady, but it lacked the warmth it had held during his vows. Then he turned to his new wife. He raised his glass. And a toast to my wife, Vanessa. He paused, and in that pause, the entire head table could feel the temperature drop. Who has taught me so much already about the importance of appearances? And who has given me a valuable lesson, on our very first day as husband and wife, about building a marriage on a foundation of absolute, unshakable honesty? The guests, oblivious to the subtext, cheered and drank, but Vanessa knew. Her face went white. The smile was gone, replaced by a look of dawning horror. She understood that the words were not a toast, they were a verdict. My parents exchanged a worried glance. They knew my brother, and they knew that his calm, measured tone was far more dangerous than any shout. Marcus sat down, the speech over. The band started to play, but the atmosphere at the head table was thick with unspoken tension. My wedding gift had been opened, and the carefully constructed facade of Vanessa's perfect day had just begun to fracture. The rest of the wedding reception, I was told, proceeded like a flawless stage play where the two lead actors had suddenly forgotten their lines. Marcus was a perfect gentleman, smiling, dancing with his new wife, and cutting the cake. But it was a performance. His eyes were cold and his touch was distant. Vanessa, for her part, tried desperately to maintain the illusion of the blissful bride, but her smiles were brittle and her laughter was strained. She knew she had been caught, but she didn't know how. The small navy box sat on the table between them, a silent, potent accusation. The real confrontation happened later that night, in the privacy of their luxurious honeymoon suite. As soon as the door closed, Marcus placed the box on the table and took out the single sheet of paper. He laid it flat, the evidence stark under the soft hotel lighting. "Explain this," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. What followed was a cascade of lies and deflections. Vanessa first claimed the email from her was fake. Then she said she had been so busy she just replied without looking at the photo. When Marcus pointed to the vendor confirmation, she pivoted, launching into a tirade about how I had always been jealous, how I was trying to sabotage her, and how the champagne color was far too close to white and I should have known better. She accused me of trying to steal her spotlight. This, as Marcus later told me, was her fatal mistake. By admitting her motive was a perceived competition for attention, she inadvertently admitted that her actions were deliberate. "So you lied," Marcus said, his voice cutting through her tirade. "You approved her dress, confirmed it with the planner, and then you had my sister, my only sister, humiliated and thrown out of our wedding because you felt upstaged. Is that it?" Faced with his cold logic, she finally broke down, alternating between tearful apologies and angry justifications. The foundation of their marriage, only hours old, had cracked straight down the middle. The next morning my phone rang. It was Marcus. His voice was heavy with exhaustion and a deep, profound sadness. "Luce, I am so sorry," he began, and then he told me everything. He told me about the confrontation, the lies, and the ugly, unvarnished truth of his wife's character that he had been forced to see. I was so blinded by everything, he said, his voice cracking. I should have known, I should have trusted you. You're not to blame, Mark, I told him, my anger at Vanessa overshadowed by my love for my brother. She manipulated you too. He told me he had laid down an ultimatum. Their honeymoon was canceled. They were going to start marriage counseling immediately. And his one, non-negotiable condition for even attempting to fix their marriage was that Vanessa had to apologize to me, in person, with him present, and tell the complete truth. No excuses, no justifications. If she refused, he would contact a lawyer to discuss an annulment. A week later, I found myself sitting across from Vanessa and Marcus in a quiet corner of a sterile coffee shop. Vanessa looked pale and tired. The flawless polish was gone. With Marcus sitting silently beside her, she recounted the events of that day, her voice a monotone. She admitted that she had approved the dress. She admitted that she felt a flash of jealousy when she saw me and that she made an impulsive, cruel decision to have me removed. She admitted to lying to Marcus and everyone else about it. I am sorry, she said, finally looking me in the eye. There was no warmth in her apology, only the grim acceptance of defeat. I hear your words, I replied coolly. I didn't say I forgave her because I didn't. Forgiveness was a currency she hadn't earned. But for my brother's sake, I accepted the apology. What you did was deeply cruel, Vanessa. You owe it to Marcus to be better than that. The years that followed were not easy. Marcus and Vanessa's marriage survived, but it was forever altered. It became a quiet, subdued partnership, rebuilt under the constant supervision of therapy and a hard-won, fragile trust. The brand-obsessed, dramatic Vanessa was replaced by a more cautious, reserved woman. The power balance had irrevocably shifted. She never tried to cross me again. She knew that I didn't play games. I dealt in blueprints and hard evidence. My relationship with my brother, however, grew stronger than ever. The incident had shattered his naivete, but had solidified our bond, reinforcing it with the steel of a shared, difficult truth. He learned to see the world not just for its beautiful facades, but for the structural integrity, or lack thereof, that lay beneath. Sometimes I see the champagne dress hanging in the back of my closet. It's no longer a symbol of humiliation. It's a reminder. A reminder that the strongest foundations are built not on perfect appearances, but on uncomfortable truths. And that sometimes, the most powerful statement you can make isn't a loud declaration, but a quiet, irrefutable piece of evidence delivered like a wedding gift.